The single most likely thing you're going to do as an indie author is to upload a book to Kindle Direct Publishing and to sell that as an ebook. So let me show you exactly how to do that now. We need to go to this area up here. This is the URL. So it's kdp.amazon.com, and this takes you to this what's called a bookshelf area just here, the bookshelf. And as you can see, I've got several books listed here already. But what we're going to do for the sake of this example is we are going to create a Kindle ebook through this interface. I'm going to show you in a separate video how you would create a paperback through this interface. But let's go for Kindle ebook first, because this is the thing you're going to do most regularly. So click the button. It's relogging me in, so that's not unusual with Amazon. And then we just simply have to work through the screens. And I'm going to do that at a reasonable rate now, not going into too much detail, but just to talk you through the key points just here. So if we call this just my book, and the subtitle, the story of my life, or something like that. So excuse spelling mistakes, I'm not going to do this accurately at all. Series, these are important when you're listing your book. If you're writing a series, so I've written in 2 series now, I'm just about to write another series, or just to release another series, you do need to put your series in. So for instance, with the Grid Trilogy, I would call it the series the Grid Trilogy, and then you'd call it book 1, 2 or 3. Now the advantage of this is that if you tell Kindle or Amazon that you're writing in series, Amazon will group them together on the site and sell them as 2s and 3s in sets with, as a bundle. And that's an automatic thing. So pretty good thing to do. Do put the series information in. Edition numbers, well, usually that's just the first edition. So it's usually just a number 1 in there. Your author name. Now, this is important because if you look at the other videos that I've created for the Alliance of Independent Authors, I've talked about how it's important to have a Amazon author page. So you need to be consistent with how you write your name on CreateSpace, on KDP, wherever you're listing. Be completely consistent. So in this case, I'm just going to put my author name here. Now, I have experimented with the contributor section. So I did want to actually add the name of my editor on here. But experience has taught me that in actual fact it just looked a bit confusing. So I actually just put my author name on now, which I find much simpler. Of course, if you've got multiple authors, if you've co-written a book, you've obviously got to put other contributors in there. But I've tended to avoid this sort of information. But much as I would like to have put my editor's name on, it just looked confusing in context. So I'm not doing it anymore. And actually she commented the same thing. So we did that with our agreement, with mutual agreement. So generally, not going to touch that. The description is your book blurb, and you've got a little bit of information here from Amazon. Now, you can use some very basic formatting in these book blurbs, but in this brief description, I'm not going to go through that now. So you can bold, maybe underline, very, very basic HTML. If you dig a little deeper into this area and into the support that Amazon gives you, you'll find out how to do that. But most of the time, you're just going to put a book description in there. In publishing rights, you basically just have to confirm that you've got the copyright to this particular book, that you own the copyright. And do remember, by the way, that if you need any more information about any of this, like what is a public domain work, I'm not going to go into that in this video now. It's very unlikely that you're doing a public domain work, and you certainly won't if you've written it yourself. So do click on those links to find out more if you've any queries. Now, keywords is extremely important because if you think about it, the Amazon site is just one big search engine. So for instance, if I'm writing a book on Facebook, people are probably going to go to Amazon and put Facebook, Facebook marketing, build a Facebook site, things like that. Those are keywords. So your keywords, the 7 that you can choose, need to be related to what you are talking about to give you a fighting chance of being found online. And I would make one of those keywords your author name. Now, when you're writing fiction at the beginning, of course, no one knows who you are, but we hope that over time, people will actually start to search for you, not by genre, but by your author name. So let's put that one in the pot, in the assumption that we're going to be at least reasonably successful as self-published authors. So those are the keywords, and Amazon gives you some guidance on that once again. Categories, these are important, and you can change categories, by the way. They're not set in stone. But if I just go through a non-fiction category, I'll do this as if it was my sci-fi dystopian books. So you've really just got to choose the best categories that you're given. And you can't beat the system. If your category's not there, well, you're just going to have to find something that works for you. So let's just make sure we need to be in fiction. And I'm good to go for something like science fiction, if it's got science fiction yet. Science fiction. And I usually go for apocalyptic and post-apocalyptic. That's usually my sort of area. And a general or action adventure. So you could pick 2 categories, and you can change categories, by the way. So pick your categories now, the best categories. If you find they're not working for you, well, that's all fine too. Unless I had content that was unsuitable for all ages, I would not put any age details there. Now, other independent authors may disagree with that. That's just my policy. If I had explicit content in there, sexual content, maybe advanced relationship content, then I would obviously put age ranges on there. But if it's suitable for everybody, I just get on with it. And again, if you were writing specifically children's books, you may also want to use the age ranges here. Now, I don't. I write general books that are suitable for everybody, so I'm not really the person to talk about that. But what I would suggest you do is, if it's a general book and it doesn't matter who reads it, there's no offensive content in there at all, well, then just leave it as it is. If it is specifically for children or young people, then maybe it's worth defining those age ranges. Okay, so we've then got 2 options at the bottom of the page, the publishing options. I'm ready to release my book now, or make my Kindle ebook available for pre-order. Now again, I don't have time in this video to go into pre-orders, but let me just flag up an issue with pre-orders. If you set a pre-order date, this is where people can order and express an interest in your book before it's actually even available. Just beware. If you don't get your book ready in time for the release date that you set, you will have a penalty. And off the top of my head, I think it's about a year. You'll have a penalty of not being able to use pre-orders at all. So beware. Make sure that the book is ready if you release it for pre-order. Now, if you're not ready to release your book now, if you're just going to save this as a draft, click I am ready to release my book now, and then click Save as Draft. The important thing is you don't want to publish it. That's the key thing. When you publish it, then it's going to be available live. So you can save as a draft if you just finish halfway through these screens. In this case, I'm just going to click Save and Continue. Move on to the 3rd panel here. Now it's asked for some descriptions there, so I'm just going to give it some gobbledygook and hope that it will make it go away. Yes, it has made it go away. That's fine. Let's move on to the 2nd screen then. Kindle ebook content. Now, digital rights management. Again, this is a whole video on its own. I don't have time to do it right now, but I think the general thinking is not to put digital rights management on your books. I'm not going to go into the chapter and verse of why that is. I'll just let you know that I don't put DRM on my books. A lot of it depends on how you feel about whether people are going to rip you off and steal your book and do evil things. My bottom line with this is if people care enough to try and cheat my books, then I'm probably doing pretty well as an author, and I probably won't care that much anyway, unless it's on a massive scale. But generally, if somebody is cheating you on a small scale and you're just a small author, you always have to say to yourself, what is my capacity to do anything about this? And should I just get on with writing the books? And that's kind of where I am with this. So I don't put digital rights management on my books, but what I would recommend you do is listen to self-publishing podcasts and form an informed view of your own on that particular topic. Okay, this is an important part, Kindle ebook cover. So I've gone into covers in separate videos. We can either launch the cover creator here and make our own covers. These are pretty horrible. I really don't recommend it. They're not nice covers. And you can spot a Kindle book a mile off if it's got one of these pre-made covers. So unless you're really, really, really desperate and this is your only choice, in which case do try to customize it as much as you can to make it as bearable as possible. Please don't use these covers, because I'm really amazed actually that Kindle even lets you use them, because they are pretty bad. What I would rather you do is spend at least a tiny bit of money to get your own cover made, in which case we're going to go for this option. Click on Browse. I've got a cover. There's my cover. Let's use that first cover that comes up there. It's sized for Kindle, and off we go. Now, if you have a cover made at any of the options I've shown you in the videos where I tell you how to get covers made, whether it's a $5, a $5 cover, or whatever it costs you, $100 or a £300 cover, whatever you pay for your cover creator will create it at the correct size for Kindle, so it displays correctly across the site. Now, if they just scratch their head and look at you blankly when you talk about the standard Kindle cover creator size, then you're with the wrong designer. Now that's uploaded my cover now. And by the way, Amazon gives you all the details that you need to see what that cover size is. Okay, so there's my cover. You can see it's just uploaded there now. So the online previewer is the easiest way to preview. I always do preview my book, but we've got to upload the file first. So before we can upload the file, we have to actually upload our book cover. So here we can upload in docx, which is just Microsoft Word, HTML, MOBI, EPUB, RTF, plain text, and KPF. There's a full list just there. Most of the time you're going to be uploading in doc or docx. What I really would recommend you do, and I'm going to show you this in a later video, nowadays I would just have to say to you, format your book in Vellum. Vellum will give you all the files you need to upload. It's way easier than messing around with stuff. So I've got to tell you, my recommendation is buy Vellum, use Vellum, format all your books in Vellum. But let's just do this for now with what you'll have to do if you're not in Vellum, which is to upload a Microsoft Word file. This is what most people are going to do. So here, I'm not going to enable DRM. I have to make a choice there before this browse button appears. I'm then going to browse. I'm going to go to my desktop, and there are the files I've got ready. And this is a Word file of my book that's in progress. It's a work in progress, and I've just done what's called a compile. I've exported that from Scrivener. Again, I explained Scrivener in a separate video, but basically it's just your book in a Word document format. So I want to upload that, click open. It's going to chug away for a little while. There we go. It's got it. It's going to process the file, and when it's processed the file, it's going to scan it for spelling mistakes, which is actually quite a handy little thing. Now, some of those spelling mistakes we will ignore because they might be, for instance, if I'm writing sci-fi, there might be words that don't even exist, words that I've invented. Sometimes they might be Americanisms or just spellings that actually are permissible, but you just basically have to make a judgment call on those. And it will, though, give you those spelling errors, and you should check them through because this is the last chance you've got to make sure you don't foul it up. So we'll let that process now. We'll come back to it when it's processed. Okay, so that has now processed, and here are the spelling errors that I said would be pointed out to us. So we need to just see whether we need to accept these. So fait accompli is an ignore. I'm actually going to ignore all of them right now. This is a spelling mistake. Damn the roar of the otter. That should be water, but I am just going to ignore that for now. But I just want you to see how this works. Jack slipped into a sandwich shop just outside of the centre and something... I don't even know what that word's supposed to be. So I'm obviously going to have to check that before we publish it. But let's just ignore all these spelling mistakes now. The key thing here is that you just see how this works. And you can email them to yourself, by the way. So if you want to email them to yourself, then go back into your document to change them, then you can. So some of them are genuine spelling mistakes, some of them aren't. But we need to just go through those and tell Amazon that we want to ignore them. Then we go back to the content and we can carry on. Now this is where it starts to get really exciting because we can now click on Launch Previewer, and the previewer is going to let us see our book as readers are going to see it. So I always spend a lot of time at this stage because this lets me see what my book's going to look like on a Kindle device. Now this is really, really exciting. The first time you ever do this, you'll be amazed. You'll think, blimey, all I did was upload a doc file, and look, we have an ebook here and it looks fine. It's all absolutely fine. Now let me just tell you about some of the controls on this page. People are going to be reading your book in many different ways, and you'll see up at the top here that we can preview how it looks, whether it's going vertically or horizontally, and on different units. So if I go to, let's have a look at it on a phone, for instance. Here we can take a look on a phone and we can flick through and just see what it's going to look like on somebody's mobile. We can flick it around like this, see what it looks like if somebody's got it on that orientation. It all looks fine. We can go back to a Kindle e-reader here, take a look at it sideways, just scroll through, then it all looks fine. So you'll see that that's actually worth doing. Just see how it looks. Just make sure you haven't messed anything up. You can scroll through if you want to go right through to the end. So the end here is 1231. It's location 1231. You can see that because that's the furthermost location indicated there. But we can go and have a look at where that is. That should take us to the end. Oops, that's take us to the end of the book. There we go, that's the end of the book. And then we can look at the cover as well. Takes a little while to load because it's doing it on a on a browser. It's brought that in black and white there for some reason. Not quite sure why that. Oh, it's because it's on a reader. That's why it's on a Kindle e-reader. And then the other thing we could do, and this is another really interesting thing. Let's just go back to the book. And we can change the font size, of course, because this is something you could do on a real reader. And the thing you've got to understand is that people will be looking at this on different devices in different sizes. Hopefully no one's going to be looking at it at that size. They need to go to Specsavers if they are. But let's have a look at, so there you go, that's a more reasonable size for somebody who's struggling to see the screen. You'll see that, you know, really there's only so much formatting you could do because people are going to look at it in all sorts of shapes and sizes and fonts and all sorts of things. So you've only got limited control. So do go through that. I actually go through with a fine-tooth comb when I do this. When I'm on my final draft, the one that's going to be released, I go through this really carefully and check all the gaps and the indentations and things like that. But in this case, once we've gone through that process, click on your book details, go back to the book details, and then we're in the ISBN section here. Now ISBN, you do not need an ISBN for a Kindle ebook. ISBNs will cost you. They will cost you, I think, for about 10, it's 100 and something pounds. I think for one, it's quite a lot of money for just a single ISBN. That's a whole separate issue altogether. But you do not need an ISBN for a Kindle ebook. So unless you've bought an ISBN, or you've got a collection of ISBNs and you know all about that already, ignore this bit entirely. And again, the publisher, ignore it entirely if you don't have a publisher. Usually when you buy ISBNs, you have to name a publisher. So if you did have an ISBN, you would fill in both of those sections. But if you don't have an ISBN, you just want to get the thing out there and selling, ignore that completely. It's absolutely fine. Click Save and Continue to move into the final screen where we get to price our book now. So do you want to enroll in KDP Select? Now, it's well worth taking the time and trouble to look at what being in KDP Select involves. You do need to do some research on this because if you're in KDP Select, it brings some benefits to you, some marketing benefits, but also it gives you some disadvantages in that you can only list on Amazon. You're restricted for a period of 90 days, and there are all sorts of little bits of small print, nothing too nasty. And in fact, if this is your only book, then actually I'd probably say to you, put it on KDP Select for 90 days and you'll probably find that you fairly easily sell some copies. But I don't have time to go into that in any great detail now. What I would recommend you do is read, learn more, read how do I enroll, and then decide whether you're for it or not. We can then go for territories, and we're going to go for all territories, unless there are some territorial issues with your book. And for most people writing fiction, there aren't going to be any issues with that at all. Just put all territories worldwide. We want to sell to as many places as we possibly can, unless we're restricted in way. And again, you can learn about that there, but I just don't think that's going to be an issue for most authors. Okay, time then to sell the books and to price the books. If you just want to keep this really simple, we could just go at 35% royalties, or we could go at 70% royalties. Now, a couple of things here, just a couple of basics here. If you set at 35% royalties, then your book price must be between 99 cents and $200. For 70% royalties, your book needs to be priced effectively between $2.99 and $9.99. Now, there's a reason for that. That's what sells most books, right? Amazon knows that that's what shifts the units. So therefore, my top tip to you is shift at the prices that Amazon knows works. They're good at this game, okay? They're very good at it. So if I just put let's just say I'm going to price my first book at $2.99. You can see here that we then get comparisons with the rates. So at 70%, we do have to pay for the delivery of the book. They charge us to deliver our book, but our royalty is going to be $2.07. Whereas if we price at 35% royalties, we're going to only make $1.05. Now, if we price our book at 0.99, which is as low as we can go, can you see? It won't let me price at 0.99 at 70% royalties. I got to go to 35% of the royalties there. The difference with 35% of the royalties is that you don't actually pay any delivery fees at that level. So if you've got a book that's very heavy with images, there is a point at which this might work for you. But most of the time, you're going to go for a couple of options. If you're writing in series, people usually make the first book free, what's called perma-free, or they price it at 99 cents to make it attractive. And then they hope that that cheap book's going to lead them into the properly priced books. And then they go for a $2.99 or $3.99, depends how long the book is, a $2.99 price point. That's usually what most people do. So you're making $2.07 on a book. The other thing that you could do here is you could check the marketplaces, because what Amazon gives you then is an equivalent in different currencies. You can then see what sort of commission you're going to be making from each book sale. Now, this in itself is a whole art form, because if you're in India, for instance, books are priced very cheaply. It's worth immersing yourself in self-publishing podcasts to learn all of this stuff. But as a general rule, what I would make sure is that in the euros, in the dollars, and in the cents, and in the kind of English-speaking territories, you're probably going to be priced at something like 3.99, you know, one of those attractive pricing models. And then when we're coming into Japan, you see, I sell books in Japan. I haven't got a clue what the price is or what the conversion is. I just kind of set it based on what Amazon recommends. But it might be worth me at some point taking some time to figure this out. And here, look, 60.85. I haven't got a clue. So I'm pretty blind about most of these things. I do take Amazon's recommendations most of the time, but I do know that when I'm working in euros or in currencies that I understand and am familiar with, it's well worth just putting, you know, 99s on there just to make the figures look a little bit more attractive for sales. As I say, that in itself is a whole area of learning, and you should immerse yourself in that and find out a little bit more about that. Finally, we're into Matchbook. Matchbook is where somebody will buy your paperback book and then you'll let them get the Kindle version for a certain price. So you might even let them have it free. If they pay $5 or £5 for your paperback book and they want to read it also on Kindle, you let them have it for free because they've bought it already, or you let them have it at a discount price. So that's entirely up to you. You can put it in or take it out. That's up to you. I always do allow lending on my books because I like people to, I just figure that if people can find my book and then go on to read other books, that's probably not a bad thing. And there is a payment mechanism for Kindle book lending. It's not entirely for free. So again, learn about it, find out what you think about it, and then decide whether it's for you. But I do allow lending on my books. Finally, we're into terms and conditions. Do make sure you read the terms and conditions. And Amazon points out that it can take 72 hours for your title to be available for purchase on Amazon, which is all fine and good. We're then done. Once you've checked everything and you're happy to go, if you're not ready to launch yet, save as draft. And if you are ready to go, then publish your Kindle ebook. When you publish a Kindle ebook, it will take 72 hours. I don't think I've ever had one that took 72 hours. They're usually done within certainly within 24. I think all of mine have been done within 24. And then once you click that publish button, Kindle will check it and it will magically appear on the Amazon site, and that's extremely exciting. And Amazon will push it to all the territories that you've set and asked it to list in. And it's as easy as that. You could literally go from a doc file to go through what I've just shown you, and you can have your book listed within 24 hours. It's very easy, it's very exciting, and at the very least, as an indie author, this is what you need to be doing.